And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of the greater Portland metro area. Welcome to Native Nations for our March program. I'm David Liberty.
And I am Adam Whiterock.
Thanks a lot for being here, Adam.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
You know, we did have a guest lined up for tonight, but he was a no-show at the last minute, so we apologize for that. But we've got some new material from Winona La Duke, who spoke at Vancouver a couple weeks ago, was it? Recently.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago in Washington.
You didn't get up to that, did you?
No, I didn't. I didn't get to go.
Yeah, so we're going to run a short tape of her in just a few minutes. And later on, we have a tape that our producer brought from the Air, Land, and Water Conference, I think, in Eugene. And we'll be showing that later on in the program. So first, I want to mention a couple books that I love and want to recommend to everybody out there. This first one is called The Saga of Chief Joseph. And it's authored by Helen Addison Howard. And this is a pretty good account of the flight of Chief Joseph and his band as they were trying to escape the military. And it's got some inaccuracies in it, but she really had good intent and tried the best to give an accurate portrayal of the events around the flight of the Nez Perce. But I've recently picked up a book that a guy named Martin Stadius wrote, a book called Dreamers. And he tried to be the most accurate he could, drawing different resources together. And it's a good book, but it was hard for me to read because it's really sad. So I have mixed feelings about that book. I don't know if I'd recommend it or not. The other one that I want to recommend was put out by the Oregon Council for the Humanities. This is the first edition, but there is a second edition that's been put out more recently. And this gives a really good account of the 9 federally recognized tribes in Oregon, and talks about their history and culture and past and present, briefly, of course, because it's a small book, but it gives a pretty good account from a general perspective, and I want to recommend this book.
Okay, we're live on one.
And we have some announcements. There's a lot happening in town coming up.
Yeah, there's actually gathering of the Flutes concert. So it's going to be an event. Of course, it's not going to be free. The last time I went there was free, so they might be needing some money, and always we need to, always give something back as well. So it's going to be May 15th, 2010. It's going to be from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. So hopefully you'll get your money's worth. It's you can get an advance ticket for $20. Or you can get a ticket at the door for $25, or children 6 through 12 or $5. So make sure we bring lots of kids. And adult tickets include 1 ribbon. I'm not sure about the ribbons, but they always say the memorial ribbon is $10. The celebration of life ribbon is $10, and recongregation ribbon $10. So.
Yeah, the Gathering of the Flutes is a really great concert, and we've had Cece Whitewolf on the show a couple times. She was the chairman of the Native People Circle of Hope. So we always like to think about Cece, and she's a good friend, and this Gathering of Flutes helps raise money for people who are stricken with cancer. It's for cancer survivors. So it's a really good heart.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's for cancer, people that have cancer. And I remember somebody told me that one of the flute artists has played Stairway to Heaven on a flute.
Really?
So he was kind of like, I was kind of not appropriate for that time. So I'm not gonna say who he was, but I was kind of interesting to me that you have play such a thing. But
well, we'll wait for our announcements. We can go through these later, and we will later on this evening. But we want to show you a quick little 9 or 10 minute piece from Winona La Duke, who was in Vancouver recently. And she was speaking, it was a food and energy sustainability was the title of either the conference or her event that she spoke at. So let's take a look and hear what Winona La Duke, well-known Indian activist, originally from Ashland. I'm sure she's got some good words for us. So Jim, if you would run that tape of Winona. I'm
introducing myself in Anishinaabe, and I'm from the White Earth Reservation, which is in northern Minnesota. Y'all know where Minnesota is? Very good. I'm from between, let's say, Bemidji and Fargo, but northwestern Minnesota. Good? All right. My parents live in Ashland, Oregon. Some of you might know my mother. I'll see there's some notes. Those are old, though. Betty La Duke. So I spent a lot of time in Oregon, and I spent a lot of time in this region. But I'm very honored to be here tonight, and I'm at the beginning of a big road trip, I have to tell you. So I have to apologize, I didn't bring a lot of books. I brought this, which I'm going to be talking about, which is a new publication we have called Sustainable Tribal Communities, and I have a few copies of it, but you can download it for free as a PDF off of our website, Honor the Earth. I just wanted to say, but the reason I'm giving you this explanation is that I'm going on a long road trip, and I can't carry as much stuff as I thought I could, so that's what I was going to say. But I'm on my way to go see this woman named Deb Echohawk, and I'm going to tell you about her to start with. I met her, I met her a couple times, but I met her when I was in Oklahoma last time, and I'm going to Oklahoma to see her after this. And she's a keeper of the Pawnee seeds. And I met her, and I was talking about the issues I'm going to talk with you about tonight. And she said to me, she talked to me, and she said, we have our corn seeds, we have all our seeds, and we had them in our bundles. And we are sacred seeds, and we're growing them out. She said we're growing out our seeds, our really old seeds, and they're really important to our community. She said, but what she said is that the Pawnee didn't used to live in Oklahoma. The Pawnee used to live in Nebraska, and they were forced by the military to move to Oklahoma. And so she said that they went to find these people in, I think how you call it is Kearney, Nebraska. I haven't been there yet. But she said that's where they were from originally. And she said they went back there, and when they returned there, that those farmers that were there, they're not Pawnees, but they cried when they saw those Pawnees returning, because they said that they had missed them, and they would like to see them come back. And I believe actually that some land was just returned to the Pawnee near Kearney. But she said that they came back and they brought their corn seeds back to Kearney, Nebraska. And those farmers grow those corn seeds for those people there, for the Pawnee. And then they have a big celebration. And she said that the seeds that are grown in Nebraska, the corn that is grown in Nebraska grows much better than the corn that they are growing in Oklahoma. And it's the same seed. And what she said is, she said that the seeds remember the earth from which they came, which I thought was a really interesting thing to think about. And it's part of what I'm working on now. I'm going to go talk to her about her story and what they're doing, but we're working on trying to recover these really old seeds and to grow them out. Because in the times that we are facing of climate change and peak oil, and the issues around food security, we believe that these are the way to go. Some of these really old seeds, because they're more diverse and they're strong. And in my travels, I met this other guy. His name is Whit Davis, and he's about 85. He lives in Connecticut. He's kind of old Yankee, and I had kind of read about him, and I finally tracked him down through some, nephew or something, and I, get out there to his place. It's this old farmstead, and I talked to this guy, And he is telling me about this corn he's growing. And it's, he said, he tells me this story, his his ancestor, we'll just go with that, very long time ago, was a guy named John Stanton. And he had come over on a boat from England, and he went to Virginia, and he began living there a long time ago in the 1600s. And he lived there, and then he continued to move up the coast, and he became familiar with a lot of the Narragansett and the other people, the Algonquin speakers in that region. So he moved to Connecticut, and when he moved to Connecticut, they had what was known as the Pequot Wars. And in that area, it was very, ruthless. The Puritans were ruthless, with those people. And Uncas, who was one of the chiefs of the Pequots, became friends with this man's ancestor. And in becoming friends, he was a translator for Uncas, and in fact, upon his passing, had written his will for him, and had written a lot of his papers in English, but they became to be good friends. And he said that Uncas gave his family some corn. And for 300 years, that family has grown that corn. And so I wanted to tell you those stories because I believe in people, because I believe in the goodness of people. And I think that somehow in this resilience of seeds that are 300 years old, he gave me some of that corn, and I don't know if it likes the land where I live as much as it likes the land where he lives. But I like the fact that somebody kept a commitment to do something over all those years, and every year he and his girlfriend, they make Johnny cakes for the Narragansetts and the Mohegans. And they cook that corn, and they have a feast with that community to celebrate the relationship between their family and those communities for all those years. So that is a little bit about how you make a durable and sustainable society in my assessment. You have a set of relations which, exist over time. They are sometimes tarnished and sometimes recovered, but you got a shot at it. So in telling you those stories, I'm going to ask you to think about how we make a society that is more at peace. And I think that involves some deconstructing of where we are. I have to be honest. In Anishinaabe-Moan, this month here is called Anabonageesis. Anabonageesis. That's my favorite moon because I like how it sounds. Anabonageesis. It means a hard-crusted snow moon. I don't know if you know what that means, but I think so. It's when it snows and then it thaws and it freezes again. And you get a hard crust on the snow, right? It's also the moon. You don't want to do a face plant in the snow. And this moon is followed by a moon, maple syruping moon. And then we have a moon called Wabaganageesis, which is a flower moon, followed by Odamanageesis, a strawberry moon, followed by Meangeesis, which is a blueberry moon. Then we have a moon that is called Menominikegeesis, a wild rice making moon. That's what it's called. And that's when we go out on our lakes and harvest our rice. And then we have one that's called Watibagageesis, when the leaves change color. Then we have one called Benakweogeesis, which is when the leaves fall. Then we have a moon called Gashkadnogeesis, which is when it freezes. Manadugeesis, little spirit moon, Giji Manadugeesis, a great spirit moon, and then the Maybidageesis, that's called a sucker moon, or when the suckerfish, it refers to the suckerfish. Now, I know you're probably wondering why I told you all those moons, but I told you them because I was wondering if you noticed that none of those moons is named after a Roman emperor. Did you see that? It's possible to have an entire worldview that has nothing to do with the Roman emperor. And it's actually, it's okay. I just want you to know that's okay. Because I think that that is a little bit of what we need to look at. Because what I will make is a suggestion to you that a society that is based on conquest, society that is based on empire, is really not sustainable over the long haul. You don't got a good shot at having good relations with anybody, you know? And so you got to do a little bit of rethinking.
And this is Native Nations, and those are the brilliant words of Winona La Duke, talking about her family and culture and practices. So it's always good to have Winona come by and give us a few words. Another issue that's really big right now, Adam, is the sea lions.
Sea lions, not the football team, or what
Not
team?
the Seahawks,
Not
the sea lions.
The sea lions, okay, yeah.
Yeah, you know, up at Bonneville Dam, all those sea lions, they start eating salmon. And this year they're eating a lot of sturgeon.
Oh yeah.
Over 900, well, 950 was the last count I heard, so probably 1,000 sturgeon have been eaten by the big Steller sea lions. These guys are huge. They're 1,000-pounders. So they dive deep down into where these sturgeon holes are and pull one up to the surface, and then they have a dew claw or something that's really sharp, and they can just slice the belly of those sturgeon wide open. And then they eat the eggs, and then they let the carcass drift down the river. And so the sea lions have had a real big impact on the salmon and the sturgeon run.
They just want the eggs.
Just the eggs.
Just
That's
the
the
eggs?
best. The caviar is the best part of the sturgeon.
Gee, that's just like, you know, slaughtering the whole buffalo and just
And just take the liver.
take the liver. That's it. You know, I mean, yeah. So I guess would be some kind of issue with people, because, you know, if you're gonna eat something, kill something, then you make sure you eat everything.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't think the people that are fishing won't like that, to see you know, a good big fish going down.
No kidding.
Just because.
Well, I saw a carcass come down river one time.
Oh wow.
When I was on a viewpoint. And at first I wasn't sure what it was. It was drifting down. And then as it got closer, I could see it was a sturgeon. And then it got passed downwind, and I caught a whiff of it. Oh, it was bad.
Then you give those sturgeons some tasers or something to protect themselves with, or
Yeah,
something.
well, they're actually killing the sea lions. They've taken 5 or 6 of them now out. They've trapped them and euthanized.
And people have problem with that too. People have problems with trying to move them, and it's just like, you know, like I said before, I said I don't want to eat no, you know, sea lion. You know, it's like I don't think that would taste good, or I would like to eat a salmon or something tasteful.
Yeah, and the people, there is a protest going on. I saw a camper parked by the dam yesterday morning that said, "Sea lions forever," or "Save the sea lions,"
Save the
something like
sea
that.
lions.
Yeah, so there was actually an organized group that had their own camper van that was their.
Yeah, and if there
Duty.
wasn't no dams or nothing, then the salmon can swim where they need to go, and they won't have so limited.
That's the solution.
Well,
Just
yeah.
get rid of the dam.
Yeah, like that's gonna ever happen, but.
I know. But that's what would actually solve the problem.
Yeah, but kind of relocating, you know, sea lions, they're just gonna come back, you know. They're just gonna come back.
Yeah. They'll eventually, you know, they scare them off, they haze them, they do a lot to try and get rid of the sea lions. But the ones that they take are the ones that notoriously are always eating salmon, the ones that they know have been eating them regularly.
Yeah, that's the thing that, you know, we gotta find a solution. You know, we gotta find something, because, you know, if they're gonna keep on continuing, they can take out, you know, a whole bunch of salmon. There's already some species of salmon that are no longer around anymore. And if that continues with the sea lions and people just continue ignoring it, then we'll start running out of salmon.
Yeah, so we want to save salmon, but it's tough. The sea lions are in this predicament because of Bonneville Dam. So that's really the problem, Bonneville Dam.
Yeah.
And before, we want to show you a clip of a woman named Patricia Cochran. She is an Inupiaq from Alaska. She's a native Alaskan. And she was speaking at the Air, Land, and Water Conference in Eugene. And from what I've heard, she's a very good speaker. You'll be surprised to see a blonde Indian, but Patricia Cochran will be speaking, and this is a little bit longer tape. So we'll see you back in about 23 minutes after we hear from Patricia, and we'll have more discussion and some announcements talking about events that are coming up in the local area. So let's see Patricia Cochran from the Inupiaq people up in Alaska.
If you would allow me to, I'd like to open, as I do, everything every speech that I've made, whether it's at the United Nations or in my own home community, by first of all thanking the Creator for this beautiful day that has been given to us, by stopping to honor all of our elders who are here with us, and to remember all of our ancestors who have come before us. For me, it's really important to remember and to honor those who have been here. I also want to pay special recognition to the tribal people whose lands we are upon today, and to thank them for permission to speak on their lands. And I understand that it is the Kalapua people who are of this area. I thank them for allowing me to be on their lands. I am deeply honored to be able to share with you some of the work that I have had the incredible opportunity to be part of. As you heard in some of my opening bio, I have had the amazing experience for the last several years serving as the chair of the Inuit Circumpolar Council. It has not only opened my world by allowing me to travel, I will tell you now, to more than 80 countries in a very short period of time. So I now am a person of the world and not just of the Arctic. So I will discuss some of the issues around Indigenous people and climate change, and I will share with you some of what I have learned, not only from my own Indigenous community, but indeed from Indigenous communities across the world. It was really just a few years ago, after the release of the Arctic Climate Impact Assessment in October of 2004, that climate change in the Arctic began coming into our global consciousness. The ACIA's long-term projections for the North included an ice-free Arctic Ocean by the summer of 2050, and the loss of our hunting and sharing culture due to climate change. While those forecasts seemed dire then, I only wish now that they had been true. We are now in the midst of a historic transformation in the Arctic. If you could, Courtney, bring up my first slide. And let me just show you a little bit of the way that we in the Arctic see the rest of the world. It probably isn't the way that most people view the map. But for us, it's sort of the world from our point of view. So we are now in the midst of this very historic transformation in the Arctic. In the past 2 years, we've witnessed entire landscapes and icescapes on the move or simply disappearing. In 2006, the projections for an ice-free Arctic summer were revised down to 2040. And after the recent tremendous melt, which stunned scientists across the world, the most alarming estimates show a new open seasonal map at the top of our world within a decade. I now feel a real sense of urgency. Today, I'm here to share with you some of what we, Inuit, as Indigenous peoples of the Arctic, have learned from these great changes. Next slide. So when I say this, I don't only mean what our communities have observed in our changing landscape. I mean to share with you as well, and perhaps more importantly, the wisdom our people and all Indigenous people have gained as we adapted over millennia to survive and thrive in diverse environments around the earth. and as we now struggle to adapt to the new challenges of climate change. For decades, we in the Arctic have witnessed the most dramatic environmental effects of globalization. We have weathered the onslaught of POPs, heavy metals, and other contaminants that are borne north in the winds on oceans and in ocean currents. At the same time, CFCs and other chemicals were weakening our world's ozone, particularly above the north, leaving us to face intense UV radiation. But even as protocols have begun to mend our ozone, and the Stockholm Convention, which Arctic Indigenous peoples played a very active role in and fought so hard for, has started to decrease the levels of contaminants in our environment, we face a new set of changes and challenges which will be even more difficult to reverse. Next slide. In the Arctic, our Indigenous communities are struggling to cope with extreme erosion, melting permafrost and slumping beaches, thinning sea ice, receding glaciers, and an invasion of new species of animals. This picture that you see in front of you is really the kinds of things that we see every day in our communities in Alaska. This is a village in Alaska called Shishmaref, where you can see this community is literally being swept into the sea. We have right now in Alaska more than 9 communities that are in imminent danger within the next 5 to 10 years that will be facing this same kind of destruction. 85% of our communities in Alaska are coastal communities, and that means for us, all of us, really facing these same kinds of predicaments. The next slide. This is my hometown in Nome. You know, we used to have these storms when I was growing up, and I heard older people talking about 200-year storms because they expected these storms every 200 years. Then they started saying 100-year storms, and then 50-year storms. In my lifetime, I have seen 5 of these events in my hometown. So you can see that this is truly an alarming type of existence for all of us, trying to figure out what do we do, where do we go, how do we live, how do we maintain who we are. So Inuit are not alone in experiencing these changes. People across the Arctic are feeling the impacts on their livelihoods and the social fabric of their communities. For instance, the Sami in Scandinavia and in Russia are struggling to maintain their traditional reindeer herding practices as shifting seasons and conditions make traveling and pasturing more difficult. In this slide here, you can see an example of what we call winter rain icing. This is a condition where it freezes and melts so rapidly that it literally forms this very strong sheet of ice over covering all of the food that the reindeer need to live upon. So we have reindeer that are starving. Just in the last few years in Siberia, in the Russian Far East, more than 1 million reindeer have been lost due to this severe icing condition. And indeed, in our communities, we see not only the loss of our animals and our species, but unfortunately, there's hardly one of us in our communities who has not lost an uncle, a grandfather, a girlfriend, who've gone out hunting, fishing, and simply never come home again. They fall into what used to be safe ice to travel upon and just don't come home again. It's a very unfortunate way to have to live. In Alaska and Russia, large predators like polar bears and wolves are stressed for food as their animals that make up their traditional diets have also shifted range. Let me tell you an interesting thing that we found recently in the polar bear. And looking at what they have been eating, that they are also beginning to adapt because they're not finding the same kind of food sources as before. So we found many of them now that used to survive only on marine animals are now really having more of a diet of terrestrial animals, that they're eating the fox, the reindeer, that they did not have to survive on before. So even our species are beginning to adapt to some of these changes. Well, this does mean more frequent and intense contacts with many of these dangerous animals, and it does also add more stress and fear to our local social dynamics. Moreover, many of these physical impacts are directly connected with those further south and are often particularly threatening to other indigenous peoples across the world. The Greenland ice cap, for instance, which is melting at an unprecedented rate, holds enough water to add over 21 feet to global sea level rise. That water is already sinking small island countries and low-lying states. It's one of the reasons that we in the Arctic have formed a strategic alliance between the Arctic and the SIDS, the small island developing states, because we are facing many of the same critical issues. And we understand that we're going to have to work together more effectively to have our voices heard. People on the coasts are threatened, as are others much higher up. The Altiplano of Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia is home to large numbers of indigenous peoples who could be devastated by the loss of water from their own rapidly melting Andean glaciers. Disease patterns are shifting as well, bringing malaria, dengue fever, and possibly avian flu to areas and people who often have little access to the basic health services. So I'd like to, if I could, just share a few of the stories and quotes from indigenous people across the globe. So if we can start that climate change loop, I'm going to go through some of the things that my friends have sent to me telling me about what's going on in their area. Here's the first story. I'm very concerned about climate change since I live on a small island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. With the current climate change, what we have suffered from the most is the El Niño phenomenon. It has destroyed a large percentage of reef structures due to coral bleaching, which in turn affects tourism and the fish population. After the Great El Niño of 1998, this coral barrier has been structurally weakened and in some instances has collapsed. The barrier is lower and less effective at wave breaking. So now, more water with more energy is coming into the lagoon, and this is creating coastal erosion. From India, climate change has had adverse effects on water availability in parts of India. Famed as the world's wettest point because of its abundant rainfall, Cherrapunji has been unusually dry. The glaciers in Ladakh, which account for 13% of Kashmir's land area, are now fast receding. The impacts of these changes, including on agriculture, are already visible in India. From the Caribbean, during the last few decades, the hurricane season has become more extreme in the Dominican Republic. Last year, the Dominican Republic was struck by 2 tropical storms during October and November, with precipitation in some parts of the country exceeding regular monthly levels by as much as 300%. The storm Olga happened out of season during December. Precipitation patterns are changing. During a normal year, the highest rainfall occurs in May, but this year, May was dry. And from my friends in Peru, she says, "Dear sister, I send you some photos of my place in Ayacucho, the south central part of Peru. We have many problems because the water is drying. No food for animals, no water for agriculture or to produce food. In this river were many fish, now no fish. In other parts of the Andes, we have problems of glaciation like El Puño, and the animals and children are dying. In other parts, like Cochran, the glacier is losing the snow. And in Africa, The rains that once fell between March and September have now been reduced to only 3 or 4 times a year in western Kenya. Subject to drought and famine for the last 2 decades, the vast and arid Turkana district, once a savanna, is now a no-go zone. The water table is sinking, and pastoralists have to trek up to 70 kilometers in search of water. Climate change is worsening problems already created by human activity. Irrigation and hydropower schemes have reduced the flows of the Omo and Turkwell rivers and contributed to the decline of Lake Turkana. This has resulted in the dying of indigenous trees and plants along the river where the Turkana people live. Even tree pods which enabled the livestock to live are no more. Animals are dying from the severe drought. Furthermore, the famous Ferguson Gulf in Lake Turkana, once a breeding ground for tilapia fish, has disappeared. The fisher folk in this area now have nothing to eat. And finally, in the Queen Charlotte Islands in Canada, I say, this year berries and fish are later than usual, at least 1 month behind the time when they usually are ready to eat. The coastline has suffered erosion along the eastern shores of our islands. This year, the herring and the whales did not show up in our inlet as they usually do. A few gray whales came into the inlet, but left shortly after. In the past, we could count on enjoying their visit for anywhere up to a couple of months. So these are just some of the sights, some of the stories that come from indigenous people across the world. And you can shut off the pictures, and now I'm sorry to say you're going to have to just listen to me and without the pretty photos to go along with it. In this age of globalization and our ever-increasing connectivity, we must recognize how the global affects the local and the local affects the global. Let us consider not only the physical, but the social impacts of climate change so we can begin to imagine the endless ways our warming world will affect indigenous communities and indeed all communities around the globe. Now, Arctic indigenous people are perhaps uniquely adaptable. We weathered the storm of modernization remarkably well, going from dog teams and igloos to snowmobiles, jumbo jets, permanent homes, and even supermarkets, all within a few decades. These enormous changes to our communities were not without consequences. Substance abuse, health problems, and most distressing, the loss of so many of our young people, especially our young men, to suicide have been among the saddest results. But through all of this, we have had our land, our predictable environment and climate, and the wisdom that our hunters and elders have gained from it over millennia to help us adapt. Hunting is an integral part of our social fabric. We remain a people of the land, ice, and snow. Hunting to us is not just about killing animals. The process of the hunt and the eating of our traditional food personifies what it means to be Inuit. It is on the land that values and age-old knowledge are passed down from generation to generation. The hunt teaches our young people to be patient, courageous, to be bold under pressure, and to be reflective. They learn to control their impulses, to withstand stress, to have sound judgment, and ultimately the wisdom to carry out a plan and to achieve a goal. Let me repeat that our hunting culture is tied to the land. For us, climate change is an enormous social issue, and thus we believe an issue of our right and ability to exist as Indigenous people. This is one of the reasons that I recently hosted the Indigenous Peoples Global Summit on Climate Change, which took place in Anchorage in April of this last year. The summit brought together more than 400 Indigenous people from more than 80 countries across the world to share their stories, their wisdom, their strategies on climate change. We also produced a declaration called the Anchorage Declaration, which was adopted by the summit, and this has set the roadmap for Indigenous communities to lead the way in climate change. Our declaration was presented to the COP meeting in Copenhagen in December and promoted coming together of not only Indigenous people worldwide, but we hoped of nations worldwide. As that change begins, new policies must put the Indigenous and other vulnerable regions of the world on a path away from perpetual reaction to environmental crisis and towards a sustainable human development. After all, the record from the Stockholm Convention and so many other settings show that the Indigenous wisdom has its place and its strength in guiding and influencing a world that has largely lost its perspective on balanced human development and sustainability. We should look again to that wisdom to guide us through this great crisis and to steer us toward a new human-centered sustainability. As our various governments, international organizations, and development programs seek to help Indigenous peoples respond and adapt to climate change, we must work to genuinely empower Indigenous and other marginalized communities. Too often, passive dependency has been a critical problem in many of the economies of the vulnerable, in large part because either the wisdom or the will was missing in the equation to provide effective social development assistance. Now, in this great struggle with climate change, must we find solutions that end the cycle of victimhood for Indigenous and other Indigenous peoples of the world. The healthy and the productive spirit of people is the basis for all successful human development. Every level in every system, whether institution or government, must be directed to ensuring that thriving human communities form the basis for a future of hope and long-term sustainability. This change will require organizations to think deeply on all facets of their programs and operations. They will have to design new types of human and community development arrangements, drawing on the best the world has to offer, and at all times including and respecting the voices of those who are struggling to maintain their way of life and livelihoods. Climate change profoundly challenges our simple-minded notion that unrestrained economic growth can cure social ills and lead the way to a better world. There is precious little time for us to recenter development on humanity, not only industry, before we fundamentally change our world, particularly for Indigenous peoples and others who contribute least to the problem but have the most to lose. Let us all work together to come to common ground in dealing with this daunting task and to move forward together as a human community. Thank you all very much for listening.
And we are back. Welcome to Native Nations. That was Patricia Cochran, who is Inuit, apparently, from what she claimed. We got different information from the handouts. So, speaking of climate change, the weather has been so warm.
Yeah, it's all different. I mean, it's like, spring is happening early. Like we had a spring last week. I remember seeing stuff grow out of my garden and just like, what is going on?
Yeah,
it's supposed to be.
It's a weird year already. The water levels are really low. I can attest that the Columbia River below Bonneville Dam is at about summer levels right now. It's really low. and they're 52% of the snowpack in the mountains. So we're looking for a real dry summer coming on, and it's going to be tough for the fish. So we have several announcements. There's a lot of good events coming up in the Portland area we want you to take part in. Those of you who are familiar with James Welch, he is an author from Montana who, rest his soul, he passed away a couple, 3 years ago. But he wrote a book called The Heart Song of Charging Elk about one of the Lakota tribal members who went over to Europe with the Wild West show. So they're putting on a lecture and concert inspired by this novel, The Heart Song of Charging Elk. And it starts next week, Monday the 22nd, at 7 p.m. Raymond Damali will be speaking about the European adventure, Lakota experiences the world of the white man. Tuesday, the next day, the 23rd, at 7 o'clock, Lewis Warren will be speaking on A Village in the World, Indian Life and Community in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. On Wednesday, the 24th at 7, Catherine Shanley will be talking about Looking for the Way Back, Diaspora, Displacement, and Desire in The Heart Song of Charging Elk. And finally, Thursday the 25th, Lois Welch, a relative probably of the author, will be speaking on Heart Song History and Fiction, a conversation with Lois Welch. So that is next week, and there's a concert that's a part of this too. Wayne Horvitz will be playing music with 4 voices and chamber musicians. And this event all happens, the lectures happen at the Washington State University, Vancouver. The concert is at the Vancouver School of Arts and Academics, and that's Friday the 26th for the concert. So it's a free event. Everybody come and quickly read The Heart Song of Charging Elk before you go, so you'll have all your homework done and be ready for the lecture. I probably won't make it because I have a grandson that's due next Wednesday, and we'll probably be in Roseburg at that time. So it's a great book. If you haven't read The Heart Song of Charging Elk, I highly recommend it. I've read it. It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you got there,
I just got some
Adam?
powwows going on, and powwows going on this weekend. We got the Paniwas Powwow. That's March 20th, 2010, which we are in. And at the Jackson Armory, if you haven't been there, it's by Marine Drive. And they had the Christmas party there. And they mostly have their powwows there at the Jackson Armory. But it's really, it's kind of, first time we went there, it's kind of hard to find, but, just follow everybody else wherever they're going, or follow if you need to.
Do you have an address?
Yes, it's 6255 Northeast Cornfoot Road. That's interesting.
Cornfoot Road,
Cornfoot Road. Portland, Oregon, 97218. And
right.
So that will be going on. The MC will be Nick Sixkiller, and the arena director will be Ed Goodell. The color guard for that powwow is going to be NEVA, the Northwest Indian Veterans Association. So they'll be there. We had them on our show a couple shows back, so they'll be there.
That's right.
And if you need any contacts, just let's see, for like vendors. There's for a vendor, Joanne's Williams at 503-667-6466, and you'll be able to get a vendor there before Saturday. So I'll probably be going if I get a ride over there.
Yeah.
And we're gonna try and on Delta Park Powwow, the one that's here. They do it every year, and that's gonna be June 18th through the 20th.
Plenty of time.
It's plenty of time. We'll probably announce it again on our show.
Oh, yeah.
But we got plenty of time for that, and that'll be the 40th annual.
Wow.
Yeah.
40th.
Yeah, 40.
Good deal.
That's a long way.
And we were going to have a guest talking to us tonight about Eloise Brown, but they canceled at the last minute, so we didn't get the guest tonight. But the guest was going to tell you that Eloise Brown is coming to town April 8th at 6 p.m. She will be at Reed College at the Volum College Center Lounge. And Eloise Brown is a Dene activist. And there's issues around the Dota Desert Rock and different land claims. Peabody Coal, I think, is involved with this whole issue. So I highly recommend Eloise Brown. She's an elder of the Dene tribe. And April 8th, 6 p.m. Should be a good lecture or a good show. Here's another event that you want to get to. It's called Creating Positive Relationships, Better Understanding Ourselves, Our Bodies, Our Paths. It's a workshop that's free and open to the public. This will be at the PSU Native American Student Center. And this is also April 8th, so we have some conflicting events here. April 8th, you'll have to decide which one you want to go to.
You both go to both.
Both at the same time, that's right. This one's put on by the Healing Feathers and Native Wellness Institute, and the speaker will be Jillian Joseph. She's a Gros Ventre, who I believe is the director of the Native Wellness Institute. April 8th, 6 to 8 p.m. For more information, contact Dean Azul, 503-725-5348.
And John Trudell.
Oh, John Trudell's coming to town.
John
All right.
Trudell, nickname Bad Dog.
And Bad Dog, that's his band, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think so. But the Roseland, Portland
Roseland Theater.
Theater, and Saturday, April 24th. And so everybody make sure you attend to that. And want to make sure to let everybody know that we on MySpace we have the shows. If you missed the show, or you can watch it on YouTube, just look for Native Nations. We have a website on MySpace that you can look up. So
there's also a good event coming up at Mount Hood Community College, April 21st. A bunch of activists are coming to town. Dino Butler, Dr. Jacques de Pelchin, Ken Ford from the Black Panther Party. So Freedom of Speech Now event, April 21st. We'll tell you more about this later. So it's coming up towards the end of our show. Oh, here's one other little thing. The Oregon Native American Business Enterprise Network, ONABN. ONABN is putting on an event called Trading at the River, May 3rd through the 6th. 2010, and it's a conference and trade show, and what they're trying to do is get Native businesses together with people who buy Native-made products. This is at the Tulalip Resort and Casino, Tulalip, Washington, and register now at www.onaben.org. So Adam, we made it through another show.
yeah.
And we appreciate you all watching and hope that you can join us again next month.
We still need help.
Oh yeah, we're looking for cameramen and technicians. We need somebody to operate the phones. And even if you want a guest host, maybe if one of us is sick or can't make it, something like that. And we're out.